Thank you very much.
Lin Mackey.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us this evening. The League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley is a co-sponsor of this forum, along with the League of Women Voters of West County, Contra Costa Libraries, the County Department of Elections, and Contra Costa Television. The forum is to present candidates running for Contra Costa County Superintendent of Schools. The League is a nonpartisan organization which does not support or oppose any political party or any candidate. We are here tonight as part of our key mission to educate and inform voters. The forum is being taped by CCTV and will be scheduled on public access channels. Just now, each candidate has pulled a number to determine opening speaking order. Closing statements will be in the reverse order. During the question and answer portion, I will alternate whom I call upon to avoid giving any candidate advantage or disadvantage. Each candidate will have the opportunity to have 2 rebuttals of 1 minute each if they so choose. To our audience here at the Concord Library, remember if you have a question or you would like to ask all the candidates, please write it on a 3x5 card and hand it to a volunteer who will get it up to me. Questions will be screened to avoid duplicates. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes for the opening statement and 1 minute to answer each question. Personal attacks are not permitted. Statements made about other candidates must be from the public record or will not be allowed. Each speaker will be timed, and we will give everyone a 15-second warning sign. If our timers in the front row could hold up so the audience sees them too. We have 15 seconds and then a red sign when the time is up. As this forum is being taped, it is particularly important that you turn off your cell phones now if you haven't done so already. And please, no unauthorized recordings or videos. I want to remind you not to cheer or applaud any statement. Now we'll proceed with 1.5 minute opening statements, beginning with Cheryl Hansen.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to share who I am and what I will accomplish. I did want to start out this evening really with my goals and what I intend to accomplish as county superintendent. And one of the most critical pieces that I see is the idea of creating a county office of education that is both proactive and responsive to our 18 school districts, which in my work as a district school board member has severely lapsed. So that is one of my premier goals, is to reestablish that kind of partnership with our 18 school districts as well as our business community. I also look forward to being able to seek out and leverage financial resources that will help us accomplish our targeted goals. There's a great deal of creativity in implementing a school district or county district budget that I intend to utilize. I also intend to work countywide on safety in our schools. I think there's a missing component among our districts where we can have better communication around those things, as well as support for our academic and student support service programs, which the county office has some of, but school districts also have that and are eager for that kind of partnership with the county office. And finally, my view is that you need a strong public education advocate. My background that has led me to this is as a teacher, a vice principal, an assistant principal, a high school principal. I was a county office of education administrator for 10 years, training administrators, and currently I'm in my 2nd term as a Mount Diablo Unified School Board member. Thank you
Ms.
very
Hansen.
much.
Thank you. Ron Leone.
Thank you. I am Ron Leone, former mayor of the city of Concord. I taught high school history, government, art, and law. I was a high school principal, vice principal, director of student services in the Antioch School District. I was teacher of the year in the San Ramon School District. I was director of the child welfare and attendance, and currently I'm serving as the assistant superintendent for Clayton Valley Charter School. I helped to save the Mount Diablo Hospital from folding. I served 16 years on the hospital district. I also became chairman of the board for John Muir Health System, a $1 billion corporation. As a city council member, I helped to build the budget. We have a 30% budget reserve. I believe the reason I'm a candidate now is because I believe every student counts. Academic performance counts. attendance counts, vocational education counts, teachers count, preventing bankruptcy and balancing the budgets count, school safety counts. I'm Ron Leone, and I ask for your support, and I'll get into more details as we go on tonight.
Thank you very much. Lin Mackey.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for coming out. One of the primary responsibilities of the County Superintendent of Schools is to provide educational services for our most vulnerable and at-risk students. The passion I bring to the position of County Superintendent is because I was one of those students. I attended our programs as a youth. I dropped out of school in 8th grade and had the ability of coming back to school as a young person in my early 20s with a young daughter. I believe in the mission of the County Superintendent and the County Office of Education. I've since been at the County Office for over 21 years, providing programs and support for our most at-risk and vulnerable students. I've worked closely with the County Superintendent. Some of the priorities I want to talk about tonight are fiscal responsibility and accountability for our districts, about developing and providing better programs for those most vulnerable and at-risk students, and about bringing safety and curriculum development to our districts and partnering with those districts. So I just want to thank you for coming out, and I look forward for the discussion tonight. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now we'll start with questions from the audience, and we have some prepared questions also from the League and from the Elections Department. So, and I will do my best to ensure that each candidate gets the same amount of time and the same amount of questions. So our first question is, education has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. How have you kept up with the changes, and how would you use that knowledge in the role of county superintendent? And we'll start with Lin Mackey.
Thank you. Great question. And education has changed drastically in the last 10 years. So I've been very active in education. I sit on a number of state boards and state committees as well as local committees. I sit on the East Bay Leadership Business Council in the business department, as well as a number of curriculum advisory committees. So the role of the superintendent has also changed. So we need to be looking to we now provide support for their local educational plans, which is very new, where it targets our most at-risk students. So those are our EL students, our free and reduced lunch students, our special education students. And so it really is bringing that knowledge from a state level and a local level to make the changes that need to be made at the County Office of Education.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Leone?
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes, I agree. The budgeting has changed now. We have more local control, but at the same time, it's still limited, and it's tied to our goals. And so that part has changed. But unfortunately, what hasn't changed is the lack of funding that we have in our educational system. And so that does need to be worked on. And one of the things that I will do as a superintendent is I'll be able to use the bully pulpit and get out there and try to explain to people the situation and support getting more funding for our schools. The other thing that's changed is our vocational education. It used to be that the county, through the County Office of Education, vocational ed went through the office and then distributed throughout the school districts. And now the funding is going directly to the school districts as opposed to, and the problem with that is that there are some students that are out there that are not getting what they should be getting.
We'll let you finish
we'll do that
that
later.
when we have more time, and we'll be discussing special needs later. Ms. Hanson?
There are a couple of areas in which education has changed, that one of which I have not heard yet mentioned, which is with our standards, our academic standards for students. And those have morphed several times over the last 10 years. And it's been a challenge for districts and the county to keep up with those changing standards. In my work, both as a County Office of Education Administrator and then the last 8 years as a school board member, we have handled those shifts and those changes on a global basis. In my work with the California School Board Association, that's what the interest is statewide, is how we can handle school finance better with our LCFF, our local control funding. We also now have LCAP plans, which is local control accountability plans, that have changed the way school districts and the county office have to do business. So there's not only fiscal changes, there's academic changes as well. And that requires a lot of support and professional development and a lot of creativity with budgeting. And that's what I've kept up with, particularly as a school board member in the last 8 years.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Now, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things tonight, but what are your top priorities if elected superintendent? Ms. Hanson?
I touched upon those at the outset, and I'll just reinforce them here. I want to reiterate the partnership with our 18 school districts. I can't reiterate that enough because I know the district superintendents, and I know in my work as a school board member with those districts as well. They feel isolated. They feel that the services have dwindled. The county office, to me, needs to shift from simply being a mandated service provider to something a lot more global, a lot more creative. There's a management aspect to a county office, and then there's a leadership aspect. And what the districts are hungry for is the leadership aspect, not just check off that your budget is balanced for the next 3 years, not just check off that you've turned in your local control plan. So that is a huge priority to me, and also in reaching out around monitoring and support for our school districts and our charter schools, which need some assistance as well in terms of fiscal accountability, as well as increasing the visibility of the county superintendent as a strong voice for public education.
Thank you. Mr. Leone?
Thank you. Well, 50% of our county students don't meet the state standards, so we need to work on that, both in English and math. There was a grand jury report that we have the worst attendance rate of all 9 Bay Area counties. I mentioned before about vocational education. What I'd like to do about it is I want to build a job training center in the county to allow all students to attend in the after-school program. We need more money. We need more robust county training for teachers and classroom resources. We need to work on education. We've got several of our school districts that are not currently meeting their obligations. And I'm afraid that if it continues, they could go bankrupt. And school safety is very important, and we need to work with our police officers. Fortunately, I am endorsed by local law enforcement and the District Attorneys Association.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mackey?
3 of my top priorities, which I alluded to earlier, is one is providing the best possible services for our most at-risk and vulnerable students and strengthening those programs and strengthening the partnerships with the districts so that students don't fall through the cracks of the districts. The ultimate goal is that those students are successful in their school district, and we need a stronger partnership with those districts so that we can have that. The other is attracting and retaining the best teachers for those students. We really need the best and the brightest working with our students. So that entails fighting for more money for our teachers and providing the best training so that they're successful, so that they aren't leaving the profession in the first 2 to 5 years, and so that they'll stay with us. And the other is working with the districts for their fiscal and accountability and their professional development and providing the highest quality services in both those areas.
Thank you very much. Now, the next question is about budgeting. We'll be talking about budgets throughout the evening, but what is the superintendent's role in budget oversight of county school districts? And also watch the jargon if you're using alphabets. The rest of us don't know what you're talking about. So, Ms. Mackey?
So the county superintendent actually is kind of a watchdog for the district school budgets. The districts turn in budgets on a twice a year, and then the superintendent and the business department monitor the budgets in order to make sure that the districts can meet their needs, meet their fiscal obligations for 3 years out. So it is one of the mandates of a county office of education. It's actually in our, it's an assembly bill that was put into place in order to help districts not go into like fiscal receivership where they're taken over by the state. So we have a team of expert business department folks that work with the districts. We send out advisors when they're having challenges. Because of the way the state funding is, a lot of the districts are having challenges. So we're having to work with them in order to make sure they're able to continue with their programs and not have to cut vital programs.
Thank you. Mr. Leone?
Thank you. Yes, I agree with my fellow candidate next to me. She is correct. That's what the oversight is supposed to do. And they're doing some of it. Unfortunately, I don't think they're doing well enough. In fact, one of the things that I'm really concerned about is that the County Office of Education is falling short themselves. They're not paying their unfunded liabilities for health benefits. They're on a system of pay-as-you-go, which means they're paying for their current retirees, they're paying for their current employees, but they're not paying for the health benefit funding for the current employees for their future. And that could pose a big problem, and it's building. And I know there's been some question about whether that's true or not, so I brought down the audited report pages from the County Office of Education that shows that they do a pay-as-you-go system and that how much they're short every year.
Thank you. Ms. Hanson?
Okay, what I'd like to reinforce is any superintendent needs to have a strong fiscal department. That's the case in districts, that's the case at the county office. So this is not something that solely falls on the shoulders of the county superintendent. She has to work in partnership with a good CBO. But districts also have a role in that. So prior to this ever coming to the county, district school boards vote and accept a balanced budget, and that's one of the big obligations of each of our 18 school districts. The county office comes in at the end and certifies that you have 3 years of solvency. So I think the missing component in here, once again, and you're going to hear this from me repeatedly, is that partnership with the school districts that has to occur, because it's not something that the county office does in a vacuum, in isolation from the school districts. So that's critical. I think the other piece that's starting to happen at the county office that needs to get more creative is the fact that many of these costs are being passed back on to school districts, especially our small school districts who cannot afford those additional services, and we have to get more creative financially at our county office to better support those 15 of our 18 small school districts.
Thank you.
Do I get to take my rebuttal
You want a
now?
rebuttal? Sure.
Yes.
60 seconds, 1 minute for rebuttal from Ms. Mackey.
Thank you. So the county office, what Mr. Leone said was incorrect. So we don't do the pay-as-you-go method. We did a couple years ago, as all the school districts do. It's a very complicated configuration, but we do not do that. We fully pay our post-retirement liabilities, and we are in a positive certification every year. We are in the highest positive certification that you can be with the state. So, and we do have that as a transparent public document that we can all look at. So I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you.
If I may.
You want your
Yes,
rebuttal?
I'd
Okay.
like to. Well, what I did is I brought down documentation itself. And you could see that this is from, now this was not this year's because that's not published yet, but last year's. And it talks about ARC, and that's the annual required contributions. And they are not paying their full ARC. And that's on here. And every year it's been growing over the past several years. So if they just started doing that this year, hallelujah. And I'm glad that they're finally doing it. But that budget report has not been made public. There's not much transparency. You cannot go to the County Office of Education's website and see their budget. So that's why I don't have that yet. But last year's, that's the way it was.
Okay, we have a difference of opinion. So voters, please do a little more research on the budget at the County Office of Education, and we will as well. Just an aside, the League of Women Voters has a website called Voters Edge. There was a bookmark on every chair before you came in. Please go to votersedge.org, where candidates are able to post information about their races and what they want you to know, and it's a really good source about the candidates. And I encourage all candidates to utilize that free service. Okay, the winner tonight in questions, quantity of questions, is charter schools. So the county has to deal with issues such as overseeing charters and authorizing charter positions. What concerns do you have about charter schools? So we'll start with Ms. Hanson on this end of the table.
Thank you. The one with the most experience, too, I'm sure. In 8 years as a school board member. Charter schools, unfortunately, have morphed over time. 15 years ago, Mount Dalby Unified, just to take it for an example, has a very functional charter school called Eagle Peak Montessori. It's about kids, it's about instruction and learning. It's 15 years old. Unfortunately, the schools that have come our way through various school districts, particular ones being Antioch, West Contra Costa, Mount Dalby Unified, are frequently the target of these charters, are what I call for-profit, not just myself, but others call for-profit charters, who come in, run by a corporation outside of the county, outside of the area, and outside of our families, and unfortunately come in without an educational purpose and focus, and at which point district boards have an opportunity to approve them or reject them. The county board can then oversee and approve or reject it. And unfortunately, by the time they get to the county board or the state board level, the lack of oversight disappears dramatically. And that is one of my serious concerns with the County Office of Education's lack of oversight of these charters that are for-profit and really causing some great deterioration in public education.
Thank you. Mr. Leone.
Yeah, I agree that there's a lack of oversight of charters, and I also think that the oversight also extends to the districts, that needs to be more robust. However, I will say that I do support high-performing schools. And to me, if it's De La Salle High School, which is a private school, that's high-performing, I support that. If it's a magnet school like Sequoia Middle School or Monty Gardens Elementary School, I support high-performing schools like that. If it's a traditional public school like Northgate or College Park that's high-performing, I support that as well. And I also support if it's a high-performing charter school. If they're doing really well, then we need to continue to support those types of schools. There are some people that don't like charter schools, but look where they're growing. They're growing in the areas that are low performing. You take a look at West County and East County, that's where they're blooming.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mackey?
So I too, I think we can all agree, we've all agreed at many occasions that there are good charter schools and there are some charter schools that should not be in business. I do not support a charter school that is run by a for-profit management system. I do think that there needs to be more oversight and more legislation passed, because what is happening right now, there is ed code and legislation that allows for a lot of leeway and a lot of non-oversight for charter schools. And that needs to be, we need to all have a voice and all advocate for more oversight. So I just lost my train of thought.
Well, let me ask another question to
Okay, very
reinforce this.
good.
Each of you have mentioned that we need more regulation and there needs to be more oversight of charter schools. If they're our kids in Contra Costa County, we need to be able to say more about what their education is. Could we get some specifics from you? What exactly would you want to see in the ed code so that you could monitor charter schools better?
So, me, am I first?
Yes, you're
Okay.
first.
Okay, so what we really need to see is that they're held to the same academic standards as a traditional public school, that they're held to the same behavioral standards, and that students have due process. Currently, a student can just be expelled and sent back to the home district. So they need to have the same due process for discipline, the same academic standards. They need to have the same transparency that all public schools have as far as their fiscal accountability, and there is what's called on a state level a dashboard where a traditional school displays all their academic performance, and all charter schools need to have that same level of accountability. And we also need, at a county office level, we need to go in and monitor more. Currently, we go in once or twice a year, look at their data, look at their program, and then if they meet the letter of the law, we have to say, bless you, you're doing great, because it's a very kind of strict criteria.
Thank you. Mr. Leone?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with anything she said. I think that it would be important that we look at all of our schools and help them. If they're not performing academically, if they're not performing, if they're being unfair, you have to have due process. I agree with all of that. So I have no problem.
Thank you. Ms. Hanson?
Actually, I've spoken about this on numerous occasions to the county board. As a governing board trustee myself, we do have oversight of one of our charters, and we make it a point to use the Ed Code. The Ed Code actually isn't that weak on charters. It defines the oversight responsibilities of the approving agency. The problem comes when those approving agencies, such as the County Office of Ed or the State Board of Ed, which can approve, that ignores those. So I've told them repeatedly, these are minimum standards. You can do more. You can visit that charter repeatedly, walk onto campus, say hello, look at what's happening in the education of kids. You can do fiscal accountability. I've asked repeatedly for audits of some of these charter documents because we get reports of one of our charter schools has an $18 million reserve. Fact or fantasy, we need to audit these schools, but we need to be visiting, we need to be looking at the data, we need to be auditing their finances, because that's where the lack of oversight comes in. All of that is allowed for. Unfortunately, much of it is not implemented.
Thank you. Testing is another big topic that I'm sure in the education world you've heard about. What is the county superintendent's role in interpreting test results to the public? Ms. Hanson?
The test results don't usually come first from a county superintendent. That's one area where you would look overall at the County Office of Education and see what the data says for the county. The state collects the data by district, by county, by state, and we're always doing a comparison to each other. So a county superintendent's role, there are 18 school districts in Contra Costa County, and a county superintendent's role is to consider each of those 18 school districts uniquely, along with the County Office of Education's own data. And the county office educates the students who are usually very much into students with disabilities or court and community schools. So you can't exactly compare all the districts together. You can look at the broad picture of the county and take those county statistics, but your job is really to go out and meet and work with each individual district. We have incredible diversity in our school districts, and the county superintendent needs to be aware of that and go out and not compare apples to oranges, but go out and have that working partnership with those school districts so that you're ahead of the curve on where the problems are and how can we work together to help support you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Leone?
Again, I agree with my colleague to my right. However, the other things that I'd like to say that we need to accomplish is we need to set our standards. We need to raise our standards. We need to raise our expectations. We need to give better training, professional training for our teachers and administrators to help improve what's going on in the classroom. And we need to give them more support in the classroom. I spoke with all 18 superintendents during this season of running for office, and one of the reoccurring themes from the superintendents was that they don't believe that the County Office of Education is supporting the teachers in their professional development as well as they should.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey?
So one of the new rules things that have changed in the last couple years for a county office of education as far as the testing and the accountability is we have to look at and inform the districts if they fall into what is called differentiated assistance. And that is if you have not met your test scores, your goals for the year at a state level or for 2 years. So we have currently 18 school districts that we had to look at their data, meet with them, look at it's differentiated because each school is very, very different, and each district is very different. So we have to meet with them, analyze their data with them, and set out a course of action for improvement. Testing, I don't know, I challenge everybody to go home tonight and try to log on and try to take the SBAC test, the test that all the kids have to take. It is a challenge, and it is something that we really need to look at as a county, as a state, as a society about our testing practices. So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question is about transparency. What, as the county superintendent of schools, would you do to assist the public who has a right to know and wants to participate in the education of their children, what would you do to assist in transparency? I know all school boards follow the Brown Act for open meeting laws. Is there anything that you could do to help the public know better what their local district is doing? Ms. Mackey?
So one of the other new things that the county office has to do is approve the local plans for each district. And one of the state priorities that all the local plans have to address is parent engagement. And so there are strategies that the county office will want to see in the local plan to show that they are outreaching to parents. And some of it, it's more than sending out a newsletter or having a website. It's how to really meet the parents where they need, where they live. It's about the diversity of our county and how the schools can reach out to them and have conversations about how do we interact with our schools and on what level do we want to interact with our schools. So as the county superintendent, we review each plan and make sure that the districts have that embedded into their plans.
Thank you. Mr. Leone?
You know, one of the things that I've been finding out going through this run for superintendent is the lack of information that you can get from the County Office of Education website. They've got some frivolous things, but try looking up their budget. You won't find anything. They've got a lot of things that are missing, scorecards and different things like that. There's some state things that you could go to. But I think that there's a transparency issue that they could do. Also, in trying to get a hold of some of them, I think I think that the Office of Education should take the Disney course on how to be more courteous and trying to get a hold of them and getting them to answer questions. I was asked. I wanted to get some questions answered by one of the departments, and I was told that they didn't have time to talk to me. Just forward them some questions and they'll get back to me. And then when they got back to me, they answered by saying, these are the documents, this is where it's referred to, look for them yourself.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hanson?
I spent 10 years working at the County Office of Education as an administrator, attending board meetings, and probably 3 of us in the room, 7 of us in the room. The first hurdle you encounter as a county office administrator or in our school districts or our community is what is the County Office of Education? One of the toughest things in running for this office is to try to tell people first what it is. When a County Office of Education has to create a commercial for what the County Office of Education does, you're in some trouble. That's how I see it, because people ought to know what the County Office of Ed does by its transparent services, by its outreach to its communities. And unfortunately, I still spend a lot of my time trying to explain where I worked for 10 years, that it's where it is in Pleasant Hill and what they do. So I think what's missing is that outreach, that get out of the vacuum, get out of that cocoon, and start to get out in the community and start to encourage and start to run board meetings that are Brown Act compliant and engaging to the community, and get our districts involved, because one of the biggest hurdles you have is what is the County Office of Ed and why does it exist? And so no one goes beyond that to the transparency.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Hanson, how does the county office have an impact on improving student outcomes?
Well, there's, again, 2 levels here. One is, and I always differentiate, because the County Office of Education runs its own educational programs, and I mentioned what those were for the most part, it's students with disabilities in court and community. They're responsible for those student outcomes of their county office programs. School districts are responsible for the outcomes, the learning outcomes for our individual students. That's what we're ranked on, that's what we're scored on, that's what we test for. So the partnership comes once again with the county office showing interest as an educational agency in our school districts and how we can work together to improve those student learning outcomes. Districts are still held independently accountable. The county office might be a clearinghouse for some of that data, but they're not in those classrooms day to day. So we have to have a really conscientious balance between school districts and the county office and how we work together to support each other. And that's really one of my large focuses that I believe is missing currently.
Thank you. Mr. Leone?
Yeah, I do agree again with my colleague. However, I want to add a couple other things. That one of the things the County Office of Education does is it has oversight over the goals, the LCAPs. And so what they can do with that is that they could see what types of goals and what they're trying to promote within the schools. And that's how you get them involved and make sure that they're following suit and that they're running programs that are going to help raise the standards for our students. I mentioned before about professional development, and that's also very important to make sure that we're providing the professional development that's going to help the staff, the teachers, and the administrators understand what to do. So I think a combination of all those things will be helpful in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey?
So one of the things that is one of the key things that helps with student achievement is having a really qualified teacher in the classroom. So in addition to the professional development that the county office provides to the district teachers throughout the districts, we also train and support new teachers, and it's a really critical area that we provide, so that new teachers come in. And teaching is hard work. So we provide mentors, we provide coaches, we provide the support they need for those first 2 to 5 years of their profession that are so challenging, because it really is true that the key thing that can indicate whether a student's going to achieve is whether they have a quality high-functioning teacher in the classroom. So that is an area that we provide what is called teacher induction when they come out of the university and they get a job. We provide the follow-up training for the first few years, and one of the areas I want to improve on and expand is that area.
Thank you. Could you just tell us who are your largest campaign contributors, Ms. Mackey?
My mother's in the audience right now. My friends and family are my largest.
Thank you very much. Mr. Leone?
Yeah, I'm fortunate that I have a lot of business community members that are supporting me. And I think the reason why there's so many that are supporting me is because of the fact that education is important. When we talk about economic development in our city, one of the things that I'm finding out is that businesses and people don't want to come to an area if the schools are not good. And so it's really vital that we do that. And going back to that last question, I will add something else. One of the things that we're doing in the city of Concord, we're going to be building a lot of housing with the Naval Weapons Station and also downtown. And one of the goals that we have on the council that we're making note is that we want affordable housing for teachers as well. If we could attract teachers in affordable housing, we'll be able to attract better teachers here.
Not to belabor the point, but could you give me an example of who a contributor is for your campaign, please?
Well, like I said, I've got lots of businesses. I can mention maybe about 15 or 20 businesses. I've got friends in the construction business. I have the trade unions that are supporting me, but I also have the local garbage company. I've got the local law enforcement, but there's people that own small businesses, gas
Anyone in the
stations.
education community or charter schools?
Oh,
or
yes, I do.
charter school?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Ms. Hanson?
Currently, I'm my biggest financial supporter because I ran 2 school board campaigns and I funded them completely on my own because I didn't want to take contributions. I try to stay nonpartisan and above that. However, for a county superintendent, you need to reach out more. So I'm still the largest contributor. I'm proud to say I consider my contributors real people. They're individuals in the community. My mother, I have not hit her up. I just have a certain standard of it, that my mother, I should take care of her, so she's, off the hook. But I do have currently endorsements that are not financial, but are boots on the ground. And I was going to be addressing those at the end. And those are many of our professional organizations, which is California Teachers Association. Our teachers associations throughout the county have endorsed me. Our Contra Costa County Office of Education staff has endorsed me and contributed. Teamsters, two of the locals and their joint council, as well as some Contra Costa family organizations have donated as well.
Thank you. Any charter school donations?
None, nor
Thank
will
you.
they give me any, nor will I take it.
Changing gears, how can the county office support school districts in bridging the achievement gap between rich and poor students? Our county is blessed with a variety of people and income levels. So what can the county office do? Because we're obviously becoming, there's a bigger gap between rich and poor. What can the county
Oh, are
do?
you starting
Yes,
with
Ms.
me?
Hanson,
I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't hear my name mentioned. Some of that is addressed in our local control funding, that the state has come to look a little bit differently at some of our populations because they are increasing. So our English learners have increased tremendously in many of our districts. And so those services, I talk about it as equity versus equality. And so for funding, you can't always put the same amount of money toward every student population. And people have to understand that some populations will cost more to educate than others to bring all students up to a particular standard. So we have growing EL populations, I think in all of our districts as I've worked with them and talked to them. And that's a population that we address. We also have a large homeless and foster youth problem, and sometimes it's not even seen. Going to the State of the City addresses that I've gone to, all the mayors are talking about the growing homeless situation in suburban cities that you wouldn't even expect. And so we have those students in our schools that we have to address. And it's not unique to one district in our county. There's disproportionate numbers, but those are populations that the state has acknowledged, and we have to.
And we'll be talking more about it. So thank you, Mr. Leone.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we could do is start helping to promote those tried and true things to help improve academic performance in our schools. For example, a robust credit recovery program, so you could help kids recover from grades that they're not doing well in or that they failed in courses. Tutoring, after school, Saturdays. There's also a lot of computer-type programs that you could use in which they could do some studying, and they could do credit recovery, and they could do, so I think a lot of it is and then we have to do things like rubrics in our schools, and to help the classrooms, you use Blackboard configuration so that you help the student understand exactly what they're going to be learning. So there's a lot of things like that we need to do to help support our classrooms, because every student counts.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey.
The achievement gap is a very big, serious issue. It's a societal issue. It is, it's considering the fact that we're number 46 as far as funding for our schools. It is about needing the best teachers in our classrooms. There is one of the primary indicators of the achievement gap is the economics of the community and of the family and the student. And we really have to start looking at the whole child, not just their academics or their testing or their education, but seeing what they need as a whole person, seeing what their family needs, helping them get employment, helping them developing programs through career technical education so that they have viable employment that pays more than minimum wage, because it is, in order to bridge the achievement gap, we have to raise everybody up in our society, and we have to focus on and pay attention to the diversity of all of our students.
Well, following along with that, Ms. McKay, what would you do to promote cultural diversity considering our changing demographics?
A few different things. One is the practice of recruiting and retaining teachers, and it is recruiting teachers of a broad diversity and that reflect the students in the classrooms, and then training and mentoring so that they stay in the profession. They also, the county office just this year, we helped develop diversity training. It was an equity institute. That's a year-long equity institute that we've been doing with the districts, bringing them to the county, and looking at trauma-informed practices and how to work with diverse populations and culturally informed practices. So there's ways you can do it kind of on an advocacy level, statewide, locally, but also how to get that into the classroom and how to train teachers and support staff on how to be inclusive to all students.
Thank you. Mr. Leone?
Yeah, I do agree that hiring diverse people and going out and recruiting and going to colleges and other places to help try to recruit the diverse people in our communities, I think is really essential. I also think that that some of the things we could do is to make them feel more invited and help them. One of the things that I did when I was principal at American High School is we actually held classes for parents that spoke Spanish so that they could help to teach their kids or understand what the homework was. So we actually worked with the parents. Another thing we did is we loaned computers and hotspots for the students so that it can make it more fair, because not everybody could afford a computer. And so to have a program in which you could help them assist so that they could use these for the classroom.
Thank you. And Ms. Hanson?
I've heard a lot about teacher recruitment and retention, and I just want to say that in Mount Diablo Unified, we accomplished that. And the way we accomplish it, there's two prongs to it. One is you raise salary and benefits, still working within your budget, to make it a viable profession, even though it's a wonderful profession. I spent 17 years as a teacher myself. But you also then have to have a culture that supports those teachers so that once they feel they're earning a living wage, they also feel that there's a culture of support. All our districts have worked on cultural proficiency. That's been around for a decade. Whether it sticks or not, we have to keep providing that professional development and support where we understand who our student populations are. We work on respect for those populations, but we also have to attract teachers to through salary and benefits and through culture of the organization. And one of the programs we have in Mount Diablo that I think should probably be branched out is we have an education academy for future teachers. And currently I'm working, and hopefully we'll consolidate it for this fall, with a partnership with Cal State East Bay, where our students will be guaranteed entrance. We're growing our own teachers and trying to we have a very diverse population. So it's encouraging those students to actually see teaching as a profession. And that's going to be the partnership with Cal State East Bay, we hope, this fall.
Thank you. This question is about incarcerated students. How would you improve the services for our incarcerated youth? Do they need improving, Ms. Hanson?
It's interesting because one of the things I experienced is when I was at County Office of Education Administrator is going out to our prison programs and our juvenile hall program and working with the teachers. It's the same thing in alternative education and in our community day schools. One of the biggest problems we have, and actually going over to San Quentin, where a friend of mine is an administrator at San Quentin, and observing those educational programs, literacy is one of the biggest problems that we have. And when I was at San Quentin observing these programs, they grouped them by reading ability, and the largest group was kindergarten, first grade, adult prisoners. And so literacy, it's no stretch at all that that's one of our fundamental problems. The second problem comes in low expectations, in dumbing down the curriculum and not providing them with an opportunity to feel successful, because self-esteem is missing, and that comes from accomplishing something, learning something. So also you have to have future possibilities for those students as well, and adults. They have to see pre-apprenticeship programs. They have to see avenues for success as well. But those are some of the key pieces for those at-risk students, adults and young people.
Thank you. Mr. Leone?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really important that we need to touch upon is character education as well. I think we're missing some of that in some of our schools where we teach to do the right thing. And I know there are some programs in some of the schools, and I think that that's important, and we need to have a more robust program. There are some programs that are called like character counts or other types of programs that it's important to try to teach students what's the right thing to do. So I think that that's one of the things we do. The other thing is, once they have been incarcerated, I think making sure that we do raise the expectations, but we also give them the types of job training skills that they're needed to get on with the rest of their lives and to improve themselves. So I think it's a combination of trying to do some prevention ahead of time, and then once they're in, try to help elevate them.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey?
So the only mandated student program that the county office has is to run the school in the juvenile hall, the juvenile court programs. We do other programs on a kind of a volunteer because it's part of our mission, but it is the only mandated program. And those really are the programs that are near and dear to my heart, and they can always use improvement. We're doing phenomenal things right now in our juvenile halls and in our adult jail programs. We've partnered with grants. We've partnered with the Career Pathway Trust 2 grant to help students find a pathway to the community college or back to their school district into an ROP program. We've hired transition specialists that will help the students transition back to the community. And we've been increasing the rigor and the academics that go on in these programs and making them so they're relevant and interesting, because so many of these students end in these programs because they're bored, they're unsatisfied, they've had trauma in their lives, and we have to really look at the entire child when they come to us in our detention settings.
Thank you. And along this line again, Ms. Mackey, we have emotionally disturbed children. Mental health is a problem in the county, no matter what age you are, but for the school population, is there a county residential school? What happens with kids that need extra help?
There is not a county-wide residential school. We do have the Marcus School run by the County Office of Education, and a couple of the districts, the bigger districts, also run their own emotionally disturbed programs, but we run a program that all the smaller schools can send students to, and it is an incredible program, and it is, we partner with county mental health as well as some of the local community-based organizations. We partner with their parents. We we work on the individualized education plan of those students, and at those particular students, mental health is key. And one of my priorities that I didn't have time to talk about in my 3 is building out the mental health services countywide and partnering with the districts and the mental health providers in our county.
Thank you. And just to be clear, that's a day program?
That's
it's
a
not
day
residential.
program, yeah. There's no county school residential.
Mr. Leone?
Yeah, well, that's correct. We don't have one. Maybe it's something we need to work on and try to get one, because there's a lot of students that are at need, and you could see that in some of the terrible situations that have occurred in other places, where there's been some school shootings, where they've hurt themselves. So we need to work on trying to work with the county Board of Supervisors, working with our local healthcare industry, Kaiser, John Muir, and help them. There is a behavioral health center that's here in Concord. So those are the types of things that I believe that we need to do a little bit more that we're not doing right now.
Thank you. Ms. Hanson?
Unfortunately, the mental health program was cut some years back a little bit, and some of the funding went away, and districts have picked this up. The county office does not provide this service. Students are quite unique and quite a variation among them. But what school districts are doing is contracting with outside providers for the most part. It's a very specialized, down to one-on-one aids with those students. When districts place students with disabilities or some sort of disturbance in county programs, they usually often provide an instructional aid as well. But large districts and other small districts, we have a program in Mount Diablo that's an outside provider. They're called non-public schools named Seneca, which works with severely emotionally disturbed students, and districts send students from all over the county to Seneca. It's a non-public school outside provider, and I think we need to review. If you look at special education budgets, they're large and significant, and there are better ways to deliver those services.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Hanson, let's talk about budgets again. I know there's a disagreement about the budget of the county office, but are there opportunities to reduce costs by right-sizing, which is a business term for reductions in staff or programs? Is there a way to make the budget more efficient?
The first thing you do, and I say this about Mount Alba Unified, we have managed to take Mount Alba Unified from the bottom 3 of 18 school districts to the top 3 of 18 school districts in salary and benefits with no more dollars. Our budget is exactly the same. County Office of Education budget, we have a $360 million budget. Mount Alba Unified, it's a huge budget. But it's a much smaller budget at the county level. And part of the problem you now have at the county is a look at, and this is what I get from district superintendents, is a concern about what is it people are actually doing at the County Office of Ed to provide direct service. So the first thing you have to do coming in as a county superintendent, and this is where a fresh viewpoint helps, is you come in and review that budget, just as we did in Mount Alba Unified in the last 5 years, and prioritize what matters. And you just allocate the funding. And sometimes that requires making some cuts. Sometimes that requires that some jobs are not deemed as critical. But you have to come in and reflect, and that's a very sensitive area that you tread into because they're people. We're a people business. We're talking about 85 to 92% of budgets being used for people. So you don't take that lightly.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree that it would be very important to go in and evaluate the budgeting process because it is looking at people and looking at positions, looking at programs, and seeing where you're spending your money, where might you not be able to. But there's a couple of other things that we could look at too. We may want to look at collaborating with the districts and forming joint partnerships and doing things together to consolidate services, because we might be able to save money doing some of those things as well. When I was first elected to the city council, we were in a deep recession and we had to turn things around. You had to make the tough decisions. And in order to do so, we went from a recession to a recovery by instilling many things that we had to get accomplished, and you had to negotiate with your employees to make sure that you were able to get those things done.
Thank
and
you.
we did.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Mackey?
So the County Office of Education budget is about $65 million. It's very different than a district budget. It operates very differently. And yeah, there's always ways of, we're always looking at ways to be the most effective and efficient. And what we try to do is make the cuts as far away from the classroom as possible. And I'll give you an example. When we made the decision to start fully funding our post-retirement benefits, we made cuts far away from the classroom because we knew we needed to put aside about $800,000 a year to pay for those post-retirement benefits because we don't want them to build up and build up. So we looked at our business department, we looked at facilities, we talked to the districts and said, what are your needs? What are your priorities? What should we cut? But we also want to ensure that there's always the best teachers and students, and teachers and assistants and staff. And we are #1 in the county as far as salary and benefits because we do deal with the most challenging population. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mackey, since we're talking about budgets, as you know, housing is a terrible problem here in the county. Some school districts even have declining enrollment because families are moving out to more affordable housing. Does the county office offer any support to districts with declining enrollment? Is there any way that you can support? Because obviously with declining enrollment, the district will have less income. They have to let teachers go. Is there any effort that the county office can make to help cushion this?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but let me try. So with the declining enrollment, one thing is we look at the district budgets as 3 years out. So they do attendance projections, and then we step in and help them work on their budget so they can make those projections and stay what's called positive, so that they can meet all their fiscal obligations. I'm not sure I understand the question, so I don't want to just ramble on about it.
And I don't want to just highlight the Mount Diablo district because that I know it does have declining enrollment and projected forward. So the county office works with a district to do a 3-year projection and help them face the reality of their budgets either going up or down.
Yes, and if it goes down, if it shows that is not able to meet its financial obligations for 3 years, we have to work with them. And I'll give you an example. There is a district that is encountering that right now. So we at our business department work with their community stakeholders. It was a group of parents, their school board, and their superintendent to decide what cuts to make as far as away from the classroom so that they would have a positive budget 3 years out. And so that's the type of work that we do with the districts.
Thank you. Mr. Leone, do you have a comment?
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, I think that the going 3 years out is good. The city of Concord actually does a 10-year projection, because then you get to see the trends and you get to see where you are. So I think the longer the forecast is, the better you're doing. But again, I'll go back to the idea that we need more housing. That's the bottom line. And if we could get affordable housing for our teachers, I think that's really important. And that's why with the Naval Weapons Station coming online and with some of the other housing units that we're having in the city, the city of Concord is projected to have about 12,000 more homes. And so with that, if we could do 25% affordable homes, and within that, we're going to be able to get teacher housing as well.
Thank you. Ms. Hanson.
Yeah, I will reiterate as well that school districts project far beyond the 3 years. The 3 years is the state minimum mandate, and we always are way past 3 years. We're looking at the long-term stretch in our districts as well. It's a business. It's when you get to that fiscal level. So you have to be that alert. So we go far beyond that. You mentioned housing, which is interesting because this is a very expensive area, and I think that's why in talking to our cities, we look at an increasing homeless problem. Looking at our student population, we have 400 homeless students at any one time in Mount Diablo Unified, and they can be invisible. You don't realize that. And actually, some of our teachers, interestingly enough, in our county have come up with some creative ideas. Don't know if they'll work, but I like the thinking. And one is the not the naval weapons, but the Navy housing that's over in Concord that's been abandoned for years. And they actually began to create a proposal in the district around what if we could take that housing and renovate it and make it available to low income. No district has yet accomplished the lower cost housing or subsidies that I know of around for housing, but we do have that as a crisis, and that's part of our recruitment concerns as well.
Thank you very much. So let's do a big picture question. What do you think, Ms. Hanson, is the biggest challenge in education today, and what do you think we should do to address it?
I think it sounds trite, I guess, but really it is one of the biggest challenges in education today is we have Proposition 98, which gives us the floor for funding, not the ceiling. And unfortunately, we're always on sort of the chopping block or always on the we're going to fix it. Most politicians run and they're going to fix education. I think the funding source, and it isn't just to run around with my hand out saying we need more money, but we do. We need more money because of the changing populations that we're encountering, and all of them deserve to have a quality education. We deserve to be able to give teachers a livable wage so that they can afford to stay in their community. So funding really is taking a look again at Proposition 98 and some of the funding sources that we have. And there's a couple of other propositions I won't get into. But some of the legislation around how we fund and support our schools, I think, is a very critical component that we can't be quiet about.
Thank you, Mr. Leone.
Well, obviously, funding is important, but remember, the reason why we're here in education is about the kids. And helping to raise their standards and their education is the paramount importance. We've got a situation here in our county where 50% of our kids are not passing the state standards. Now, some of the areas are doing much better. If you go down to the San Ramon or the La Miranda area, but you've got other areas like out in West County or East County, where 75% of the students are not passing the standards. We need to raise our standards. We need to help the students become better educated. So because of the things that I don't have time to talk about all the ways in which to accomplish that, but those are the things that we have to do because it is about our kids.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey.
Funding is one of the biggest challenges we're facing in education right now. As I said, we're one of the lowest funded states in the nation. And it's also that as a society, right here in this room, there's a lot of folks that really focus on education and prioritize education. But education is not prioritized statewide. We don't have, we need to make children our primary focus. We need to make educating children and taking care of kids from birth till adulthood our primary focus, and that takes some funding, and that takes reprioritizing the funds for public education. We can't starve public education and then expect us to work miracles. We need to really think of all the needs that students have across the board in the affluent communities, in the disadvantaged communities. Kids are under stress on so many levels in our community, and we need to look at it, and it really does come back down to funding.
Thank you very much. Now, we're coming to the conclusion, and this will be the final question before your closing statements. So, Ms. Mackey, why do you want this job?
I want this job because this is my passion. I've been at the county office for 21 years. I've worked in a district I went out and worked in a district for a couple years after when I became a VP. But the mission and the goals of a county office of education, to be a service provider and to provide services for the most at-risk students in our community, is the work I want to do. And I want to continue to do it into the future. I want to lead this county office education into the future, doing good work and being of service. It is the job I want to do, and I want to be of service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leone.
I've had 20 years of experience in regular comprehensive schools as a teacher. I was teacher of the year. I was a coach. I was an administrator for 20 years. In both high-performing schools as well as schools that were struggling. And so looking at how I believe because of those experiences, I am able to say that I have the experience, the capabilities, the skills, and the leadership that is needed. And that's why I decided to do this, because I see a need, and it's for the kids, and that's why I believe every student counts.
Thank you. Ms. Hanson.
Well, I'll say it. I've said it many times. Education is my passion and my commitment. That's how I ended up in a career in education. That's how I ended up on a school board. And this is the only position I would run for besides school board, because it's about education and it's about our students. And that's where my passion lies. But what I want to do with the county office, having served 10 years there, is I want to re-energize it. I want to make it viable. I want to make it a place people know where it is and what it does. And I want it to build community among our districts. Diversity is less relevant than community in all of these areas. And they're feeling isolated. They're wondering why the County Office of Education exists, why people are employed there, what's it all about. And it's easy to change that. But it's easy to change it by getting out and having those conversations and having the credibility to be able to bridge the county office and the district jargon and language and relationships and bring us all back together. And otherwise, there's no point in having a county office of education if people don't turn to it for service and support.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the audience for supplying such well-rounded and interesting questions. I think we did a good job with our variety of questions tonight. So now each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. And we're going to go backwards from our opening statement. So number 1 will be Lin Mackey on the far end of the table. So 1 minute for your closing statement.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. So again, my name's Lin Mackey. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for our county schools. I hope you go out and vote for me on June 5th. I have the passion and the vision to lead this county office. I have the endorsement of the county superintendent, the current retiring county superintendent, the state superintendent, Tom Torlakson, many board members throughout this county, many educators, the Times endorsement. My priorities, as I stated before, are to provide high-quality services and supports for our districts, to have fiscal oversight and responsibility and for our districts, and to help retain and attract great teachers. Again, I really thank you for coming out. If you have any questions, I'd love to talk to you afterwards, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Leone.
Well, I'm a candidate for county superintendent because I believe that every student counts. I went from the classroom as a classroom teacher to high school principal to district office administrator. My experiences include curriculum development, textbook evaluation, teacher mentoring, vocational instruction, special education, budgets, honors programs. I was chairman of the board for John Muir Hospital, which is a billion-dollar corporation, and I was the mayor of the city of Concord, which is the largest city in Contra Costa County. I have a lot of experience, training, and skills that I believe this office is needed and to help turn things around for our county and for our kids. So I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Hanson.
Thank you for this opportunity. I would just like to reinforce that my vision is to take the county superintendent's role and the County Office of Education from sort of a management organization to a leadership organization. I spent 10 years there training leaders, all of our school administrators, more than 1,700. And my goal is to inspire that leadership in our county. And my 8 years on the governing board, I think, have brought me this breadth of experience from the classroom to the boardroom, I say repeatedly, because what it's going to take at this point to bring the county office forward as an energized organization is somebody with a breadth of experience who understands all ranges of education and can function equally in all of those ranges. It also takes leadership that has people following them. And I'm very, very proud that our teachers have endorsed me throughout the county. All of our associations have come behind me, and our Contra Costa County Office of Education staff has come behind me. And I'm very, very proud to have that credibility and leadership respect already built in as I take on the job of county superintendent. And that matters to me, that people will be willing to follow me and trust and have confidence in my leadership.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank this evening our sponsors, the Contra Costa Libraries, the Elections Department, Contra Costa Television, for co-sponsoring our forum, and to thank all of you, the audience, for your respectful attention, and be sure to vote on June 5th. So these are your 3 candidates for Contra Costa County Superintendent of Schools. Let's give them a hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, those were good questions. You had a good range.
Thank you, Ron.
You did. And then when you didn't, you filled in.
Thank you.